In a recent video, I was asked, do you read bedtime stories? I do. Welcome to this series called Folklore and Fairy Tales. Today's story is The Frog Prince. The art there is by Erin Claire Barrow, a Canberra-based illustrator of feminist folktales, and I'll provide a link later in the video and in the text for this video. The text of the story is by me. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. It was 87 days since the princess's 21st birthday, and, instead of turning her mind to affairs of state and politics as her father the king had wished, she was lounging beside her wishing well and playing with her magnificent golden ball. The king's efforts to get her to accept more responsibilities as part of the royal family were in vain. The princess had come here to while away her days in idle pleasure since she was a small girl. Politics was hard. Diplomacy was boring. Statecraft was the task of those who simply did not have the luxury of sitting around all day by a wishing well, rolling around a golden ball. Alas, this tranquillity was disturbed by a most terrible thing. Oh, wail! A grievous misfortune befell the princess. Pity! How could she have deserved this calamity? For on this day, 87 days since the princess's 21st birthday, the princess, who had steadfastly thought about nothing but rolling around her golden ball, lifting her golden ball up into the air, and safely catching her golden ball on its return to earth, was distracted by a most peculiar butterfly that had entered her garden. And where usually her attention was transfixed by the task of catching her golden ball, today her mind turned to the butterfly, and the ball dropped and fell straight into her wishing well. Never before had such a thing happened. In all her years of idle leisure, never had her ball been anywhere but in her hands or in the air. Never before had her golden ball fallen in the well. "Help!" she cried. "Oh, help! My golden ball has fallen into the wishing well. Won't somebody please help?" "I will help," responded a croaky, froggy voice. "I will help you." And much did the princess marvel, and surprise captured her thoughts, but the croaky, froggy voice indeed belonged to a frog, but not an ordinary frog, mind. This frog was large as a cat, with the intense stare of a leopard, and the haughty air of a lion. And it spoke again. "Let's make a deal. I'll jump down the well to fetch your ball in exchange for a kiss." The princess winced. Could she really kiss this frog? Sure, he was certainly cleaner than an ordinary frog, but the thought of kissing his rubbery amphibian lips made her retch. And what if he wanted to use his tongue? On the other hand, she loved nothing more than she loved her golden ball. Did she love her ball more than she hated the thought of touching, let alone kissing, this disgusting beast? "Yes." "Mr. Frog," said the princess, "I love nothing more in this world than my golden ball. If you retrieve it for me, I will pay you with a kiss. No tongue." "No tongue," agreed the frog, and he jumped down the well. After a short while, for the well was dark and deep, the frog emerged from the well, golden ball in his Bactrian hand. The golden ball exchanged hands, with the princess taking possession. "Thank you, Mr. Frog, thank you so much." "And now," said the frog, "for your side of the deal." But the princess winced again, harder than before. Where previously she had only to think about the kiss in hypothetical terms, now she was confronted with the stark reality that she really was compelled to kiss this frog. The frog would touch her, and she would touch it, and their lips would touch, and the kiss would be exchanged. "I am sorry, Mr. Frog," said the princess, standing and taking her ball. "I simply cannot kiss you. This idea is simply revolting. But thank you very kindly for retrieving my golden ball." and some days passed, all of them spent by the princess lounging by her well. But it so happened that it was 96 days since the princess's 21st birthday, and the king's guards came to see her by her wishing well. "Your Royal Highness," began the senior guard, "please forgive this intrusion. Your father, the king, seeks you at court." "But I am not at court," responded the princess. "He will not find me there." "Yes, your highness," replied the senior guard. "It is that he has summoned you to court." The princess, disgruntled and with a grunt, accompanied the king's guards to the great hall of court, her pretty golden ball under her arm. At the end of the great hall was a raised platform, and on the raised platform was a royal chair, and on the royal chair sat the king. At his feet sat a frog. But not just any frog, large as a cat, with the intense stare of a leopard and the haughty air of a lion. It was the frog. "Ah, daughter," exclaimed the king, "I am here, listening to common pleas. Here, I hear the pleas for justice from the common frog." He paused, then corrected himself. "Common folk, that is. But this frog pleads relief from me, daughter, as the arbiter of the king's justice. This frog, with riveting, tells me a story of a contract that you failed to honour. Please, Mr. Frog, tell your story." "Your Royal Majesty, for the sake of brevity, I will repeat only the key elements. The princess asked for help when her pretty golden ball fell down her wishing well. First, I made an offer. I would retrieve the ball in exchange for a kiss. Second, the princess accepted these terms. She thought about the offer and told me that she agreed to the terms. Third, there was consideration. Both the retrieval of the ball and the kiss were valuable and were to be exchanged, one for the other. Your Royal Majesty, this was a binding contract that should be legally enforced." And the princess wailed, "Surely not! How terrible that somebody would attempt to enforce a kiss! You are no frog, you are a horrible toad." "And now she defames me," complained the frog. "Daughter, my daughter, remain calm and dispassionate. Apologize to Mr. Frog for your outburst that surely it was so trivial and slight that no reasonable court could consider it defamatory." Reluctantly, near petulantly, the princess apologized. "But now," said the king more gravely still, "explain your side of the events." And the princess, though irresponsible and lazy, was undoubtedly truthful, and affirmed what the frog had claimed. "I find that Mr. Frog is correct. There was a contract, and it should be enforced," said the king. "What remedy do you seek, Mr. Frog?" And the frog was filled with joy. A win in court! Surely it was true that there was no creature so lowly in all the kingdom who could not enforce his rights. Surely it was true that there was no person so high in status that they were beyond the obligations of law. Rule of law, what a thing! The frog, elated, spoke happily. "Your Majesty, what else could I ask but the terms of the contract to be honoured?" And the princess, though irresponsible and lazy, was undoubtedly not foolish, and had, much to her father's surprise, remembered her lessons. "That is simply not possible," said the daughter. "Mr. Frog seeks specific performance of the contract, an order that I personally perform some task. Specific performance is a discretionary remedy, father. It is not a default remedy at law. In this case, damages, financial compensation for his loss under the contract, are sufficient as compensation and should be awarded. He performed a task and he should be paid for them. The payment should be in gold coin like every other normal commercial transaction." The frog was indignant. "I object. I would not have performed my labour for mere gold. The contract was for something more important to me than gold." But the princess continued, Mr. Frog seeks a remedy that would require ongoing personal interaction between us. The remedy would compel me to perform a personal active engagement with Mr. Frog. It is simply inappropriate to order specific performance as a remedy. The frog was again indignant. I object. The personal performance was acceptable as a term of the contract prior to me fulfilling my performance under the contract. I am a very proud frog. Though my skin is rubbery and my form is amphibian, I keep myself clean. I am not a slimy frog. I am not a dirty frog. Diving into the damp, slimy well caused harm to my dignity as a proud frog. There is no ongoing personal interaction. Merely a kiss, and I will be on my way. The princess was not deterred. And finally, Mr. Frog is in the wrong court. Father, you said that you were listening to common pleas. Specific performance is an equitable remedy, not a remedy at common law. As we have not yet fused common law and equity, Mr. Frog cannot seek this relief from you. And the king applauded, his heart filled with joy at seeing his daughter argue so brilliantly. She is correct, Mr. Frog. If I were to exercise my discretion to order specific performance, which, given the availability of damages, I am not inclined towards, I do not have equitable jurisdiction in this capacity. You would need to petition the Lord Chancellor instead. The frog was crestfallen. No haughty air of a lion, no stare of a leopard. He even seemed smaller than a cat now. Then an idea struck him as his demeanour inflated. Your Royal Majesty, orated the frog, I accept this interlocutory decision explaining why equitable relief will not be granted. In that case, I seek damages. I seek the princess's pretty golden ball. What? Exclaimed the princess. Nothing in this world means more to me than this golden ball. I simply will not part with it. The king furrowed his brow. That would be an acceptable award of damages. Daughter? Now was the princess's turn to experience fluster. Your Majesty, Father, do not compel me to lose that which means most to me. The sentimental value to me is worth far more than the monetary value to Mr. Frog. It is simply not a fair transaction. But the king could not hear in this plea a lawful justification to refuse the request. The frog had experienced humiliation and indignity when he jumped down the well. These things were invaluable to him, and he retrieved the ball which, after all, would very likely still be lost down the well if it were not for his skill. At last the king had an idea. Mr. Frog, daughter, I am inclined to make this ruling. I think it is fair compensation for the trouble suffered by Mr. Frog. But before I make this ruling, I will direct the parties to exit the Great Hall and try again to seek a settlement of their issues. Some distance from the Great Hall, beyond the royal garden on the outskirts of the woodland, the princess and the frog sat in discussion. Anything but my ball, Mr. Frog. You do not even want this ball. You just want to make me suffer. The frog, large as a cat with the stare of a leopard and the haughty air of a lion, heard the truth of what the princess had said, and he was embarrassed. You are not wrong, Your Highness, croaked the frog. I only ask for the golden ball because I know it means this much to you. But you cannot know how much this contract means to me. The princess was confused by this admission. Whatever do you mean? The retraction of the frog was hasty and rushed. No, I cannot say. Forget that I said. I must not say. But the princess angrily pushed for an answer. Mr. Frog, we must speak candidly if we are to find a just solution. Why does a kiss mean so much to you that you would deliberately seek to upset me by taking away my most valuable possession? And the frog was full of shame. I didn't want this. The princess continued, what sort of creature would try to punish me in court for not kissing them? What sort of creature would want the court to order me to kiss them? What sort of creature would want to punish me over this? and the frog was again filled with shame. I did not want this. The princess was undeterred. This is monstrous. Sure, you might have a legal right to do this, but why do it? Why not get my ball as an act of goodwill? Why try to get a kiss out of this? Why try to enforce a kiss? Why punish me when you don't get what you want? And the frog overflowed with shame. Tears welled in his eyes, and he looked to the ground. Softly he spoke. I am not supposed to be a frog, princess. I was once a prince. I acted poorly, disgracefully, and a fairy punished me by taking away my human form and forcing me to appear as a frog. She told me that the only thing that would return me to my true form was a kiss from a princess. She also told me that if I ever spoke of this, I would be cursed to live as a frog forever. I behaved really badly here, I know. I now understand why the fairy turned me into a frog. I don't really want your ball, and coercing you to kiss me is clearly not what the fairy had in mind with this curse. Now that I've told you about the curse, it is unbreakable. Keep your ball. And the frog hopped off, never to regain his human form. It was 213 days since the princess's 38th birthday, and she was no longer a princess. Her father resigned the crown, and she ascended to it. The queen was wise and just, and her pretty golden ball was now the prized possession of her daughter. She was deft at politics. Her diplomatic skills were sublime. Her mastery of statecraft had allowed her kingdom to prosper. Deep in thought she sat at her writing desk, her mind troubled by long-standing problems of administration. "I will help," responded a croaky, froggy voice. "I will help you." And much did the queen marvel and surprise captured her thoughts, but the croaky, froggy voice indeed belonged to a frog, and not just any frog, but the frog, as large as an eagle with the stare of a hawk and the inquisitive air of an owl. "And how will you help me, Mr. Frog?" "Merge the courts of equity and common pleas. This will mean that courts can exercise both jurisdictions without needing to transfer matters between jurisdictions. Then devolve the administration of justice to lower courts and tribunals, so that easier, straightforward issues can be handled quickly, while more complex matters can be escalated for your attention. Why should you have to preside over petty contract disputes?" "You make a lot of sense, Mr. Frog. What do you want in return?" "Your Royal Majesty, I long ago learned the lesson about entering into agreements for ignoble purposes. Now I seek only to help. I shall be grateful of whatever reward you think appropriate." And the queen laughed. Both she and the frog were older and wiser. How they had matured and increased in dignity. And she kissed the frog on his forehead. At once, nothing happened. The frog was forever cursed due to divulging the nature of the curse to a third party, and the queen returned to her sombre demeanour. "Mr. Frog, I need a minister of justice to reform the administration of the courts. Perform this task admirably and well, and I will ensure that my ambassadors seek mages, clerics, wizards, and witches from across the globe who might find a way to break the fairy's curse. Your Royal Majesty, serving would be an honour." And it took many years before the Queen's ambassadors found a fairy capable of undoing the curse, and shortly thereafter the Queen made the frog into a law lord to sit on the Queen's bench, and there he heard cases of such incredible complexity and intricacy that he spent his years happy, curious, and mindful always of the proper power of court processes. And that was the story of the Frog Prince. More art by Erin Claire Barrow is available here. The earlier art was used by permission. That's the website for Erin. I am available on Twitter at Legal Reckoning. Sleep tight.